Hi, I'm Mrs.D. Math. Thanks for joining me today. We are going to cover how to graph and check equations and inequalities in 7th grade math. So let's go ahead and get started. We've gone over this in a couple of videos, but in case you've missed it, an inequality is a math statement that compares the two expressions using the symbols less than or equal to, greater than or equal to. An equation, which is also in this, we've gone over in other videos, is just two expressions that are equal to each other. So here we have a table, and these don't include the equal sign because that one's pretty easy, but we'll show you how to do that. And so I have my symbols here. The first one means less than, and if you notice when I'm graphing this, it's going to end up with an open circle. That open circle goes on the number that it would have been equal to, but since we don't have that or equal to sign underneath our less than symbol, then we are going to have an open circle. That means that it could be any number up to or after that number, but it can't include that number. So we'll talk about that here a little bit more. And less than is always going to go to the left. So if it's less than or equal to, it's going to be a closed circle to the left. Greater than is going to be an open circle to the right, and greater than or equal to is a closed circle to the right. So let's go ahead and solve this two-step equation. We've been doing this on some of the videos recently. So if you haven't seen those or don't remember how to do this, you can go back and rewatch one of those. But in this case, we have an equal sign. So I am going to split it down by equal sign. I want to isolate this x. I want to get that by itself to figure out what it actually is in order to make this a true statement. So I'm going to first move this plus 5, and in order to get that away, I have to do the opposite, which is minus 5, and I'm going to do that to both sides. So now my plus 5 minus 5 makes 0, so I'm left with 2x equals negative 8. Don't forget your sign rules. I'm adding two negatives, so I have to add them together and keep my negative. Then I'm going to divide both sides in half. So half of 2 is 1, and half of negative 8 is negative 4. So in order to label this x equals negative 4 on this number line, I'm just going to do a closed circle at negative 4. That means that negative 4 is the only answer that can make this equation true. So let's go ahead and look at what some of these others would look like. I'm just going to do a couple other ones. Let's just say I have the answer x is less than 2. Well, if that's the case, I'm going to go down here to the 2, and I'm going to put an open circle because it's not the number 2, but it could be anything less than the number 2. So that means it could be 1.99999 that never ends, just repeats forever. That could also make this answer true, but the number 2 could not. And we'll do a problem that explains where you can understand what that means. I might also have the answer x is greater than or equal to negative 7. So that means at negative 7, I'm going to have a closed circle because that or equal to bar underneath my greater than sign means that it does include the number negative 7. And then I'm going to shade everything going to the right of negative 7 because anything that is greater than negative 7 could also make that x be a true answer. When you're solving an inequality and your coefficient is a negative number, you will inverse your inequality sign. We've been over this on a couple of videos as well, but let's make it a little bit harder. Now I have the distributive property, which is part of my problem. Now, you did learn the distributive property in 6th grade, but it was not something that was spent a lot of time on. So what this is saying is 2 times x minus 5 is greater than or equal to negative 6. So that means that I have x minus 5 2 times. So if I have 2 of those, what I'm doing is I am multiplying this 2 times each term inside of the parentheses. Remember, terms are separated by add and subtract. So now I have 2x minus 10 is greater than or equal to negative 6. Now I have a two-step equation. So we're going to go ahead and solve that, or inequality, excuse me, by adding 10 to both sides. Remember, we solve it just like an equation. So now this negative 10, positive 10 makes 0. 2x is greater than or equal to a 4. And this time I'm dividing by a positive, so I'm going to leave my inequality the direction that it is. So now x should be anything greater than or equal to the number 2. So let's go ahead and label that down here on our number line. So at the number 2, I'm going to have a closed circle, and it should include anything greater than. Well, in order to make sure I'm correct, I can test this out. I can take the number 2, because I know it should be equal to that, and I'm going to plug it in here for x in my original problem. So 2 minus 5 is negative 3, and negative 3 times 2 is negative 6, which indeed makes that true, that it is equal to negative 6. Now I need to try out another number greater than 2 to see if that's going to work. I'm just going to go with 10, nice round number. 10 minus 5 is 5. 5 times 2 is 10. And I know that the number 10 is greater than negative 6. So that works as well. So here we have a very similar problem, but this time we have a negative 2 instead of a positive 2 that we're going to be distributing. So again, we're going to distribute first. I need to simplify my problem. So that's negative 2x plus 10 is greater than negative 6. So now I'm going to have to subtract 10 from both sides. So now this is going to go to 0. Negative 2x is greater than negative 16. So now I'm going to divide by a negative 2 on both sides. So this time I'm supposed to flip my inequality sign, or reverse it, do the inverse. Negative 16 divided by negative 2 is 8. So my answer should be everything less than 8. Now, it's not supposed to include 8, so I don't want to have a closed circle. I'm going to have an open circle. And this time I'm going to go to the left. So let's try it out. If I plug in an 8, it should not work. So if I plug in an 8 here, 8 minus 5 is 3. 3 times negative 2 is negative 6. Now, I know negative 6 equals negative 6, but there's no equal sign underneath that. So in this case, that does not work. It is not greater than negative 6. So let's try a different number. Let's just go with 0. 0 is nice and easy. If I plug in a 0 here, 0 minus 5 is negative 5. Negative 5 times negative 2 is 10. And I know that 10 is greater than negative 6. So it does work if it is less than. If you wanted to go even further, you could plug in another number to check it. But I think we've plugged in enough to make sure that we know this is a true statement. I'm Mrs.D. Math. Thanks for joining me today for Graph and Check Equations and Inequalities in 7th grade math. Have a great day. Bye.